Super. Thanks so much. Okay, good morning. So we were chatting a few minutes ago before some of you came on about how it is raining, and I took the it's kind of dreary approach, and Dora took the it's kind of wonderful approach. So we're going to try and go with Dora's attitude this morning. So it's more like spring. Hopefully that's true. So welcome. We won't even go with the Ides of March thing at all. We'll just bypass that altogether. All right, so let's get started. Here's our agenda today. We're going to do shortened introductions. We're going to do quick announcements and updates. We're going to ask for some input from you, including doing a survey and having some discussion, I hope. Then we'll do our typical case opportunity. Anytime you want to talk about resources, barriers, wins, that kind of thing. That's your time, and we hope you'll take advantage of that. And then we're looking forward to getting an update from the legislative session that just wrapped up, which was in some ways a doozy. And we're pleased to have Gina and Janet from the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities come and talk to us about the majority of bills that pass that will affect our populations. And then we'll also have someone from the Division of Adolescent and Young Adult Medicine at the U talk to us a little bit about the bill that passed around transgender youth. And then we'll wrap it up. So with that, let's get going. So yeah, if you don't mind, we'll take a little bit less time to do this, and we'll just ask you to put your name in the Zoom profile. So for those of you who didn't hear me already say it, click on the picture or the place where your face might show up, and then there should be some options for you from those three little dots, and they should let you rename. And that will be terrific. And that just helps us to know who's on the call. And then we won't take that time to go through and have everyone unmute and so on and so forth. However, if there's anybody new, we would love to have them introduce themselves. And you could put that in the chat too. I forget sometimes how convenient the chat is for Zoom, and we actually want to take full advantage of it. So please feel free to use the chat, and you can put questions and comments in there throughout the entire meeting. And if you are new, we would love it if you would use the chat or unmute and tell us a little bit more about who you are. Sometimes silence prompts things to happen. So I'm going to be quiet for just a second and see if anyone wants to speak up. Chat up. Okay, well, we'll just keep going, and feel free to, again, use that chat feature or unmute. That's great. All right, so we'll do some announcements relatively quickly. Want to remind you about Pediatric Project ECHO. It is well underway in our spring 2023 session. So we have a meeting today at noon today, and it's about Primary Children's Connector Service. So that should be a good one. Next week, there'll be another Autism 101 session. We don't have anything on the 29th, but then again, first Wednesday in April, it'll be about pediatric comprehensive care. So some good ones, some relevant ones, I think. And remember that these are recorded. So if you're unable to attend at noon for the live session and you're interested in the topic, you can come back to find those after the fact. And oftentimes we're able to include the slides and other resources that were mentioned throughout the meeting. And those are all posted on this webpage. This link will be in the meeting summary that we send out, so you don't have to try and figure that out now. Yeah, this is an ECHO series that we've been doing for a little while now. It's done pretty well, if I say so myself. We rely on Michelle to do the bulk of the work around Echo. And yeah, I think there might be something for you if you'd like to check that out. All right, I want to mention some medical home portal updates. We've been pretty busy, and we've updated a number of pages, and then we've got a new one as well in terms of our clinical content. So we've done newborn differences of sex development, admission checklist. That's a new page, and then we've updated these others as well. We do have an update to CBD for neurologic conditions in children. We have updated our big module on transgender and gender diverse youth. We've done an update to our foster care FAQ that's written specifically for parents. So please feel free to check those out. Those links will also be in the meeting summary as well. And I didn't get it. Let me go back just for a second. I didn't get it in these slides, but we always want to remind you about SPARK, which is a research study that has a home at the University of Utah and has been going for a little while. It's going really well. And we want to just make sure that you're aware of the opportunity for any of the families you work with who have a diagnosis of autism, that they are welcome to be involved in it. And it's at no cost to them. In fact, they try and make it so easy that it's almost completely painless. And there might be some Amazon gift cards in the works. So I don't know, Gabby, if you want to put any information in the chat about how they could get more details about that, but you're certainly welcome to. Okay. Well, this is the time where we are hoping to have you tell us what you think. So we have a survey, and the survey came about because we got some input, a little informally, from some folks who have been attending UCCCN but hadn't done it so much of late. And so they gave us some thoughts, and we thought, okay, these are really valuable thoughts. We need to ask some of these similar questions to our larger group. So we want to do that both with you guys who are on our meeting this morning and also to our larger mailing list. So we're going to ask the very same questions of them. And when that email goes out, you can just ignore because your input will have already been captured here. So we want to know what you think about some particular topics around our format and kind of just how we've been doing things for a while. So a poll has popped up, and we would love it if you would go ahead and look through those questions. I'll be quiet for a minute, and then I'll go through each one of them.
So Mindy, the only thing about this is I filled it out earlier, and on number 6, it says if you answered somewhat unlikely or very unlikely, it still makes you answer anyway, even if you said very likely.
Yeah,
So
it's a
just so you
limitation
know
of
that.
Zoom. Okay,
So
thank
just
you.
pick your favorite out of that one.
Okay.
I said I don't have time. I never have time. So,
Okay.
but I would highly likely present. So.
Okay. All right, I think I will start going through these. Apologies if you're still reading them. All right, so at the top, we wanted to ask how you would feel about shortening the meeting from 90 minutes to an hour. And I know the vast majority of you are going to say, we love the 90-minute meeting. We want it. But, all right, kidding aside, we're guessing that most people would be all right with reducing the length of the meeting to an hour, which is, I think, a more typical length and possibly some of the reason that we don't see some folks. We know that there are a few of you who have something that happens regularly on Wednesdays at 9, and that makes it harder to attend this meeting. So we have that in mind. The next question is about whether or not we should keep 8:30 as the starting time. And I'm sure that you are all fully aware of how hard it is to move a meeting where so many people, we're trying to accommodate so many people, and we've had it at 8:30 on the third Wednesday of the month for a long, long time. So we're really reluctant to do too many changes that way. But certainly we could move it earlier. And so that's the question. That's the reason for that question. And at any point in time right now, guys, if you want to unmute and chat or put something in the chat, please do. So I would love to, we want to capture it on the Zoom poll as well, but we can have a little discussion. That would be great. Yeah, thanks, Gabby. Yep. Zoom doesn't give us these options. We wish that we could. So we should have put one more option on 6 that we didn't, and apologies. Okay, so parts of the meeting you find most helpful. We didn't include introductions. You can see, I think we're deciding that that's not the best use of our time, even though I really like to know who is on, but I get that that takes valuable time. So we're going to try and do something differently around introductions, but we've kind of left the rest of the sections of the meeting there for you to tell us what you think. And you can choose more than one in there. Number 3. And number 4, in order to shorten the meeting, we'd no longer do. Yes.
Sorry, I tried raising my hand, but I don't know how, if it is very evident or not. But I was going to say, one thing we might consider though too is having just brand new people, like it's their very first meeting or something, maybe do just a really quick intro. Then again, if we're limiting meetings to 60 minutes, even that might take up too much time. But I just wanted to throw that out maybe as a consideration. Like, anybody that is their very first time joining us, they could pop on for a real quick second and just say who they are and what organization they're with.
Right, if they're comfortable doing that. I think it's
Sure.
a great idea. For some of you who might be newer to these meetings, we used to do these meetings in person. And we were fortunate enough to have a technology component that allowed for people who were farther away in the state to join us virtually, but we would also gather in person. And the being together in a room was really great. And I miss that. And I don't quite know how to go back to that, or if we should in this new post-pandemic world. But that was kind of the reason for the introductions, was to have that feeling of, oh yeah, that's right, I remember you, or whatever, that we used to get by being in those rooms together. And so we do want you to feel like you have the ability to connect with people. That's part of what our goal of UCCCN is the networking component, the community component. And so would love your thoughts on how to get that happening. So that was part of the reason for the introductions. But yeah, Eric, I really like that idea as well. So
What if we did, once a year, a gathering?
I like that idea as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that one too, maybe even twice a year, maybe in the spring and fall time when the weather is actually pretty good.
Okay.
An in-person meeting with the option of, like we did at, 100,000 years ago, with the option of zooming in.
Right. That's a really good idea. Okay, so we'd have to figure out a location, and that was the challenge that we had before. But I think it's a challenge we're willing to take on.
And
So
depending on the amount of people we have, we might be able to use the Utah Parent Center.
nice.
I'm
Okay.
We
handy.
could try to work that out, but it depends on capacity.
Yeah. Sorry,
I-
who else was speaking?
This is Dora.
Hi,
I was
Dora.
actually thinking quarterly, so you could do it 3 times, and then maybe you can do one closer to like one if I find a building somewhere down closer to the south, then one central, and then one like in the Salt Lake area. But that's my idea.
Okay,
Kind of move it around.
great.
I don't know if that would work with the technology.
I was gonna say, scheduled far enough in advance, we do have some nice big rooms over here at the multi-agency state office building. So I mean, I do know things get booked up quickly, but with enough notice, we could definitely schedule rooms here, and they're definitely big enough.
Nice. Okay. Love it. Very good. All right. So let's see. I think we were talking about number 4. Many of you may have already submitted this, so sorry if you're not looking at it, but we were asking about how to shorten the meeting, what we should focus on since we won't have the full time. And so we were thinking about whether we should focus a little bit more on the cases that I think are very compelling when someone is able to present one or more than one. And then the main topic of the meeting, where we usually have somebody from the community come and talk. Or if we wanted to do just like our current meetings, where we keep our announcements, we keep our kind of our medical home portal spotlight, some of those things, and we just try and do everything faster. All right, number 5. So this, so we know that what happens when somebody does bring a case is that this great, awesome community of care coordination professionals always wants to help. And that's so much the point of UCCCN. So we love it when folks bring a case, and we just wonder if maybe that's something that we should try and have happen a little bit prior. So it's been a little bit spur of the moment, or just, we'll see what happens. And we're wondering if we should make it a little bit more formal, a little bit more organized, and actually ask folks from our community if they would be able to be prepared with that occasionally. And so that's number 5. We'd like to know how you'd feel about having that opportunity and knowing it ahead of time and being able to come and present. And when we say present, for those of you who may not be familiar with this, it's everything we do here is pretty laid back, right? It's just saying the details of the case without PHI and what the hurdles are, that kind of thing. Okay, so number 6, this is the problem one. Sorry about that. If you answered somewhat unlikely or very unlikely about being willing to present a case, why? So if you said that you were neutral or somewhat likely or very likely to submit a case in advance and be willing to present it, then you're still stuck answering 6, and sorry about that. So we will review the data and deal with the answers on number 6 appropriately, but you'll just have to pick one there no matter what, sorry. Okay, number 7. So we want to know what kinds of topics you want to know more about. And we had, in fact, found that we were doing some of the same topics repeatedly, but for a reason. So behavioral and mental health, we know that there's such a need for that. And whenever there were more organizations providing those services, or when there had been a change in some of the systems and ways these are being provided in our state, we always want to tell you about that. So that's why, for instance, with behavioral health, we did it at least once a year. We also would bring in the Utah Asthma Program and some of the more local health programs around asthma in once a year. We typically talk about autism once a year, what's going on in Utah around autism. We typically talk about IEPs and 504s every summer to help folks get prepared for what's coming with the families as they go back to school. But we're hearing that maybe that's not the most helpful. So we really do want to know what you'd like to hear about and like to learn about. And we're limited with a Zoom poll. We can't just say, type in what you want. So we've got these choices for you. And if you say other, we know who you are because you've registered for this meeting. So we can follow up with you about those other topics of interest. And we would love to hear what it is that you're interested in so that we can do a better job for you. All right, then number 8. Hey, you know what? If you want, you can actually be a part of our planning team. We meet once a month and you would be very welcome. There is no reason that any of what we do around UCCCN is closed. So if somebody has the interest in helping plan these, we want you to know that you are very welcome. So that's what number 8 is. Would you be interested in helping plan our meetings, or even just one? You don't have to be a part of the planning committee. You can just come for one planning meeting. And then finally, should we ask for your feedback more often? We have this ability through Zoom. It's really nice. So because we've started asking you guys for to register to be able to get the link to come to these meetings, that means we know who you are. It's a little big brother, but boy, it sure helps with us to collect some information and know who's attending and when and that sort of a thing. And so we can put up a poll like this and get some really good information, and we can do that much more often. So we'd like to know how you feel about that. We don't want to survey you to death, but these Zoom polls are pretty quick and easy. So that's what that's all about. Does anybody want to say anything before we move on to our next part of the meeting? Okay, well, we got some good ideas about maybe doing some in-person meetings, which I think would be great. And feel free to put anything in the chat if it pops into your brain throughout the meeting. You're always welcome to get in touch with me by email directly, and you can do that, you know, after the meeting or whenever. So, thank you very much for that. Oh, I see that Hayley's put something in the chat. That's great. We're so glad you're here, Hayley. We know you're going to talk with us a little bit later on, so that's wonderful. Yep. Chat is great. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is your time. We really like it when we can hear what's going on with somebody else in our group around challenging cases, barriers that you're coming up against, trying to help a family, trying to help a young person. If you have some great ideas that you've enacted or come across or whatever, we love hearing about something new that's a resource or a service in the community, and we add those to the Medical Home Portal service directory. So this is your time, and I'll just be quiet for a minute and see if anybody wants to talk.
I was wondering if anyone had if anyone knew or had a connection to a medical supply company that provided pediatric incontinence supplies without Medicaid. It's really like a different insurance. We haven't found any. And we've called every single medical supply place in Salt Lake within like 50 miles of Salt Lake for several of our autistic or, you know, developmentally delayed patients, and there's none that will cover it anyway, unless it's Medicaid. So if anybody has any ideas or knows anything, if they could let us know, that would be great.
Are you talking about a private pay option?
Well, no, because I know Amazon exists and, you know, other things, but like doctors are trying to find if, you know, there's anybody that would cover for like Blue Cross Blue Shield or what?
So generally, we're not seeing insurance companies, and we haven't seen them over time provide coverage for incontinence items. It's far and few between for sure. But you know, that's the Medicaid is the way to get them covered. But if you don't have Medicaid and you have incontinence, you have to find a way. I'd be happy to do a little research to see what's out there. We use Edge Park. I don't know if you have looked at Edge Park. It's not based in Utah, but I don't know if they do a private pay or not. And but if you have families struggling in need, we can sometimes locate, you know, some temporary help for them as well. Because there are, I like to call it the parent underground out there, and there are some extra supplies available if necessary, and we can connect families with that for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. Okay.
Hi, this is Walt.
Hey, Walt.
And I was just going to talk a little bit about Social Security. They recently revamped their SSI page. And so if you just Google SSI, it brings up the page as to who is eligible. They have an adults side and a children's side. And they talk about how SSI works, how to apply for SSI. And then they have a little place there where you just click on for children. And so they've made it much easier for applying now. You can apply online, you can still apply by phone, but you can also apply in person at an office, or you can still do the appointment thing by appointments for SSI.
Okay. Great. Look at that. Well, that's, we appreciate the heads up. They've done something good.
Thanks, Walt. I didn't know about this. This looks good.
And this is Gina. There's still the diaper bank in Utah, and they're starting to collect here and there some of the incontinence supplies for older kiddos, but they still do have some for those younger kiddos with disabilities that are not able to be potty trained.
Oh, no. Okay, looks like we need to double check on that. Okay. We will do our due diligence about this Utah Diaper Bank link and make sure that goes out in the resources of the month email after. Thanks, Gina. Yeah, the Utah Diaper Bank is a great organization. Okay.
Minnie, may I make a really quick announcement? We are in the next month at Department of Health and Human Services going to be hiring 2 care coordinator positions, slight kind of 30 degrees off from what we've been doing in the past. This is from the Office of Early Childhood, a preschool development grant. And while for the last several years, the majority of our care coordination is focused on children with special health care needs, this new grant will really focus on the general pediatric population, birth through 5, birth through 8, actually. So kind of a slightly expanded population there. But working that general pediatric population, and the goal of the grant is really to have kids ready to learn by the time they enter school. So it's going to be connecting families with services like high quality childcare, Head Start, making sure families are connected with primary care physician, medical home, doing some screening things like ASQ, MCHAT, things like that with those families. But we also know that quite often families bring a slightly bigger laundry list than what they appear at first blush. So we also anticipate that a lot of these families are going to will need to be connected with things like Medicaid, TANF, SNAP programs, public entitlement programs that are in existence as well. So we will be sure to put out an announcement and maybe listserv that out when those actually do go live. They've been approved through HR, and we're just waiting for the opportune time to get them posted. And we'll announce that when those are ready to go.
Excellent. Okay. That sounds great. We'll make sure to help get that information out, Eric.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Mindy, this is Dora. I just wanted to let you know that because Shriners is partnered with the Utah Office Highway Safety and Safe Kids, I'm actually an instructor for traditional car seats. So if any clinic wants a presentation on what you should be checking for car seats, for traditional car seats, I'm certified to do that, and they grant us money so that I can do that as well. So my traditional work is to tell you everything of what you can refer to Shriners. So we have the special needs car seat clinic, but having my training in traditional car seats has allowed us to have all those fundings come in. So if anyone is ever interested in that, I'm just for traditional car seats, I'm available to do that education for your providers and nurses, case manager, anyone that is interested in doing that.
Well, that's great. Now, Dora, would that be something you'd come and do in person?
Yes, that's something in there, because I bring in the car seat and they give me a dummy, so I'm able to show them the most common misuses that families usually miss while putting car seats in.
Yeah.
And then so traditional car seats, if you're looking at them, 60 to 70% of them you can find an error. Special needs car seat clinic, through our special needs car seat clinic at Shriners, we found that it's 90% error. Just those kids need extra support, and the families are really great about being creative on being safe with their kids. They just don't know that there's car seats for them. And the way that we have it set up is through that grant and through funding through Shriners. We already have the special needs car seat clinic, so we have them evaluated by our provider. Our techs are certified through the state in special needs car seats, and then they leave in the car seat.
Right. Right.
So,
amazing.
but traditional car seats, we have one big event in, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's September, October, I have to look, that we just open it to the community and we'll check all car seats.
Oh, that's great. Really, really great. All right.
Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dora. We'll make sure that that goes out in the notes as well. Okay. So Eva has mentioned that she was trying to connect some Spanish-speaking families to Spark, and they got some information that Spanish options don't exist, but I don't think that's true. Eva, can we follow up with you after the fact and make sure that we get you connected correctly?
I recently spoke with Dr. Carbone, and my understanding is that they absolutely do have some Spanish in, ways to help Spanish speakers.
Yeah, I do believe that is correct. Okay, we will follow up with you, Eva. Okay, great. Okay, well, I think that this is our time to go back to our main topic, which is about our recent Utah legislative session. And I see, oops, let me go back. I see Janet as well as Gina on. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn the time over to you guys. Was there anything that you wanted to present? You want me to let go of the controls? Okay. So I'll let you guys go. We're excited that you're here. We really appreciate it.
I'll let Janet go first. I think you're still on mute.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start this presentation by making sure you know that the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities is a grassroots organization. It's been working on legislation since 1980 with a group of amazing parents, 2 of whom retired, one of which, Jan Ferret, is still with us and still working hard at the Capitol to help support legislation for people with disabilities. So if you get any message from this, it's you need to start now. If there is something you are concerned about that needs to have legislation or needs to be a priority within the DHHS or whichever division that you are in. And that's what happened to the Legislative Coalition. We were alerted to the fact that caregiver compensation, which had been in place through Appendix K, which is the health emergency program, was due to end in 2023, this July. So several parents were very concerned about this because during the pandemic, 10.3% of waiver individuals 18 and older opted for this compensation. And because of this compensation, they found that their individuals that they were providing exceptional care for were doing so much better. Their anxiety was decreasing. There wasn't that care provider coming in and out, resigning after a day or 2 of working with these individuals who are no longer those cute little babies, but are often in their 20s, quite large, with severe disabilities and behavior problems. So the parents were really anxious to make sure that caregiver compensation was in place. So Legislative Coalition took action and we developed a caregiver coalition, and we started in April. That was our first meeting, and we met every month and we invited stakeholders. It was an amazing coalition. We had DSPD, admin, and researchers, and they were really important to this project. We had Medicaid, I'm gonna just have to plug in, I'm sorry. We had Medicaid, we had AARP, we had programs within DHHS that work with spousal caregiver compensation. We had the University of Utah, the governor's office, and most importantly, excuse me, we had legislators, Jennifer Daly Provost and Senator Harper, who were instrumental in the spousal compensation, were on board. So the reason that we felt it really important to have DHHS involved was that the first step of anything is that the program, the division that the program comes under, has to put in a building block, and it has to be a priority with the health department. And so that is what we worked on. But more than that, we worked with the researchers on developing surveys to collect data, and that data was really important in getting the health department to put caregiver compensation as a priority. So we met all the way up through October, and we developed strategies. So we were all ready. Everything was in place for when the legislative session began. So the most important people on this stakeholder committee were the parents. The parents were amazing. We had 2 specific parents that took the lead, Lisa Thornton and Annalie Smith. And they they were tied to me all through the legislative session. What we decided, and what the legislators decided, that as well as it being a priority and a building block through the health department, that Senator Harper would run a bill. So we do the two things simultaneously. And the importance of running a bill is that everything's coded, so that if the program does go through in legislation, all the language is there and it's ready for statute. So come the legislative session, everything began in earnest. And Lisa had a huge spreadsheet of families that she could contact. She is a president of the Prader-Willi Association, and many of those families relied on caregiver compensation because those kids are so hard. And the parents, you know, it benefited them to give up their, not just jobs, but careers to stay home. And that little bit of caregiver compensation, it's around $500 a month, just helped to support the family. There was one family too down in St. George that the wife had run off. They were living in their car, and Lisa helped them to get caregiver compensation, and that helped them to find a place to rent. So for some people, it was basically finding a home and putting food on the table. For others, it just kept that support going. So I'm just going to run through really quickly our legislative journey so that you know how hard it is to get a bill passed. So the health department did provide testimony before the Social Services Appropriations Committee, and caregiver compensation was put as a priority, but it was only one time. So that was a little disappointing, but also it made us realize how fortunate we were that we also had a bill. And if the bill failed, we still had that one time to fall back on, which was going to be internally funded. So there was going to be no issue with money. So the first step was the committee hearings through the Senate committee. The parents turned up in force and provide wonderful testimony to the Senate committee. It passed straight through the Senate floor. Then it went to the House, and this was scary because it went to Business and Labor. And this is where they tell you that bills go to die. So this is where the real advocacy work comes in. And I learned such a lot. I've never done this before. I've only done appropriations. We went to the Capitol the day before the meeting, Lisa and Annalie and I, and also Danny Harris from AARP was a huge supporter in this. And we met with every single member of that House and committee. And it turned out that Lisa either was related or knew a lot of the members. And we were so well received. The parents were wonderful. And there were some doubters out there. There were some out-of-state people that had got to some members of the committee and said the money should go to the wait list. But anyway, the next day came at 8 o'clock, parents showed up, and the House committee didn't get to us. We were on the agenda, but there was too much on the agenda. So those poor parents that traveled, you know, snow, 8 o'clock in the morning. And so that actually worked in our favor a little bit, I think, because it made the committee feel rather nice towards us. So the next day we turned up again, presented testimony. There was one legislator that was a little bit shaky, but it passed unanimously, and then it passed out of the floor. So it was a great journey. When it went to the House floor, it did have a little hiccup because there was some heated tempers over a bill that went before us. And this is where you need to have your legislator on speed dial. So, and then when it came to the term for caregiver compensation, the bill was circled. So I'm texting Jen Daly Provost saying, what's going on? What's wrong? And they said, we just want the tempers to die down a little bit. So they waited till after lunch, and then they presented the bill and it passed unanimously. So One of the, if you're ever doing this, I think one of the best things we did was we met with Speaker Wilson and President Adams, and they were fully supportive of it. And if those two were, you know, the leaders of executive appropriations are behind you, then they hold the purse strings and the money's there. So it was an exciting time. It was a roller coaster ride. But the most important thing was having parents input. I just kind of guided them along, and they were amazing. So caregiver compensation, ongoing funding passed, and I know we're working on including medically complex and the trach folks into that waiver, but we've got some work to do on that. Just quickly, House Bill 242, which was a waitlist bill for people with disabilities, passed everything. Representative Ward did an amazing job educating the House members on the waitlist, and there kept being shouts of this is Medicaid expansion from certain legislators that put a kind of cloud over some of the bills. But Representative Ward spoke at one of the caucus lunches and really educated them on what Medicaid expansion is and what it is not. So he did everybody a service by doing that. It didn't pass. It did pass, but it didn't get funded. So what he did was he asked for 3 million. Well, he asked for 10 million, but he got 3 million in funds for respite for those people on the wait list. So I'm not sure how DSPD is going to work with that, how many people, how many hours, but we'll be finding that out. So so that was my journey, and those were the two bills that I focused on. And then I'm going to hand it over to Gina on medically complex.
Okay, I'm just going to run through a few things quickly. As Janet told you the process, we both learned a lot this year. Janet needs an award because we do this volunteer, and she spent more than full time helping people know about all of the issues that families and individuals with disabilities face. So one of the great wins that I was a part of was getting expansion to the medically complex children's waiver. A lot of drama with that as well, unfortunately, because it really is Medicaid expansion. And so we had to stay away from those words. And we also had an individual, which she was a parent from out of state, that was kind of giving a lot of misinformation. And so we were fighting an uphill battle, but we didn't have to do much. She just kept giving misinformation, and the legislators actually caught on to it and called her out on the floor. And so we knew that by that point that Janet helped me go and educate on waivers in general, including the Katie Becca or TEFRA option on, hopefully that we can get to that point at some point. But we are really getting the legislators to know how important these waivers are to the different populations of families and individuals with disabilities and special health care needs. So with that said, the medically complex children's waiver did go through a couple of substitutes, but finally passed out with an increase in slots. So what this means for some of our parents is originally the way that the language was written, which was very unfortunate, was that if they did the acuity and the scoring and all of that, that if you had a child come on that was very high acuity and there was not another slot, that child could be placed in a slot, and one that was not as high in acuity could lose their waiver spot, which is just not right. I mean, even the legislators know that that's just not right. So that fixed the language for that. as well as when I was part of the original advocacy and writing of this bill, and the legislators did not want a waiting list like DSPD. So there was only that annual open enrollment, and it was only if there was money for new spots or natural attrition of people, individuals moving off because they are transitioning into adulthood, or unfortunately that they had passed away. So this makes it so there is ongoing open enrollment when there's slots, period. They don't have to wait annually. And so this should really, really help get those families, especially of those kiddos coming out at the hospital that need a lot of support that their private insurance is not going to help with, so that they should hopefully not have to wait so long to get on the MCCW. So that it was a huge win, and we are excited about that. A couple of other things that affect the populations that you serve are autism coverage amendments. ACU, Cheryl Smith really worked on this with Senator Bramble, and now it requires Medicaid to apply for a state plan amendment covering pharmaceutical, psychiatric, psychological, and therapeutic care for enrollees with autism spectrum disorder. The big piece of that is that it doesn't end, I think it was before there was I can't remember what the age was, but now through adulthood. So a big win for individuals with autism, because we all know that kids don't lose their autism once they become an adult. So the other thing that was, as you've seen, probably on all of people's minds was the education piece. There was the funding. It was House Bill 215, which we were all hoping wouldn't pass, but we wanted, I mean, there were pieces of it. Unfortunately, it was a political game. They said we can get teachers some additional income for salaries as long as they created the scholarship program, providing $8,000 for families to put their children in private school. And many of us were against that, just because we know that once, especially for children that have special needs, they need those protections of an IEP. So we kind of were neutral, because we know that there's still the Carson Smith scholarship that is focused on children with special healthcare needs. The other one that I think that is helpful for many of you that have children that are in your practices that may not have citizenship. We actually got, it's called the Children's Health Coverage Amendment passed, which was amazing. Senator Escamilla was, she wasn't really looking forward to this passing, because not many vote on her bills, but we had bipartisan support on this one. And it's that a child who was not traditionally eligible in the program, as long as they've been in the state for 180 days before the day in which the child applies for their program and meets the requirements described, and the child's parents' income has unsubsidized employment, then they can get some Medicaid coverage through the Alternative Eligibility Expendable Revenue Fund. I didn't even know that existed. That's exciting, because of so many, we know all the time that we have families that they need coverage for their children because of the special health care needs and the disabilities they have. And that is, the family income is equal to 200%. So that's, even though it's still pretty low, it's higher than a lot of the Medicaid coverage. The last but not least was this is more about moms, but luckily we got Senate Bill 133 modifications to Medicaid coverage for postpartum moms, where they're extending that coverage for 10 months so that mom can have that medical service for a year that matches her new baby. And so hopefully alleviate some of those postpartum issues with depression or healthcare issues that they're not able to take care of if they don't have insurance. So that was a huge win too. So that is some of the ones, there was a lot that went on this year. It was a roller coaster ride, but the wins that we did have are significant for families of children with disabilities and special health care needs. So now I will turn it over to Hayley.
Hi, thanks you guys for letting me participate. That sounds like really good news out of you guys' end of the legislative session. Not so great for our kids, but so there were 2 bills that passed of the 3 sort of anti-trans bills that affect our patients in the adolescent medicine clinic and all the patients in Utah that identify as gender diverse or transgender. The big one was Senate Bill 16, Senator Kennedy. It was actually probably the it's the preferred bill over the one that the House was trying to push, but ultimately all of the surgery. So basically it prohibits any any surgeries from happening, period, for patients under, sorry, I was multitasking and now I just want to get back to my notes. So no more gender affirming surgeries for anybody under the age of 18. And really this affects only the people or our patients that were getting chest masculinization surgery. So our trans boys would sometimes get this at 16 and 17. And so they're no longer able to do that or receive those surgeries anywhere in Utah. And people with surgeries scheduled this year were just canceled, or even this month, immediately effective after the signing of the bill on the 28th of January. All of this went into effect. Patients seeking medical interventions like puberty blocking medication, anti-androgens to sort of suppress testosterone in trans girls, or any gender affirming hormones need to have a gender dysphoria diagnosis that was documented prior to the signing of the bill on the 28th. And they need to have been receiving treatment for that, for gender dysphoria, for 6 months before we can prescribe any medications. And so just for some context, we have about 100 people still waiting to get into our clinic when our template opens in October. And so we have a lot of people just really anxious, and hopefully pediatricians are all feeling comfortable writing or documenting a gender dysphoria diagnosis if they knew that their patients identified as trans or gender diverse sometime prior to that January 28th date. And then I think it's just important to note that we are able to continue to provide care for anybody who's sort of grandfathered in under that law. So anybody who we have been seeing, that we have been seeing prior to the signing of that bill, will be able to continue to get treatment as appropriate going forward. And I think a tricky piece of this legislation, at the last minute, they snuck in language that basically said that anybody who is receiving this care can withdraw consent up until age 25. So if we started somebody on a puberty blocker or on a hormone at age 16, then they can withdraw consent if they regret that up to age 25 and sue the provider for battery and assault in a civil charge. So we're reconsenting everybody at age 18. As they turn 18, we're just going to reconsent everybody to protect the providers. And we are the only gender clinic now in Utah. So there used to be Rebirth OBGYN would also see transgender youth, and she is like Rick's Lucanar is the doctor there, and she's no longer going to see any transgender youth. And so we are absorbing her patients. And they presumably have that documentation, obviously, because they've been seeing her. And then what else? The gender marker bill that went through Senate Bill 93 passed. It was originally going to not allow anybody to change their gender marker until age 18, but it passed to allow people over 16 or 16 and older to still change their gender marker. This is always done with like a letter from the medical provider, and often requires a letter from a therapist. It's always at the discretion of each judge, so they can just ask for whatever information they want to satisfy their own feelings that it's okay for somebody to change the gender marker on their birth certificate. And I think that covers pretty much what we can and can't do now. We can still do things. So I guess also the big take home message is we are still seeing all these patients in our clinic, and we still invite and want to see gender diverse and transgender patients, regardless of whether or not they have the diagnosis prior to that January 28th date. Even if we can't do or prescribe things like hormone blockers, we can still provide things like norethindrone or progesterone only birth control to stop periods from happening. And it's still going to be a gender affirming and safe space for people to be. And we will help people find surgeons outside of Utah or providers outside of Utah that can start puberty blockers. I think it's also important to note that a lot of the insurance companies are not covering, like Select Health and the University of Utah insurance companies. Neither of them are going to provide any, they're not going to help pay for any, they're not going to cover any medications that are prescribed by out-of-state providers. So if a patient goes to California or Denver to get a puberty blocker and their insurance would normally cover that, if that were happening here, then they're not going to cover that if they get prescribed that out of state, nor will they cover the medical visit or costs, any costs associated with that visit, which is disappointing. So does anybody have any questions about that?
I have comments, but I might not bring them up here. Yeah, I'm so pleased to hear about the wins from Janet and Gina in the coverage of the legislative session that I heard, and I was actively, looking to understand what was going on. We didn't hear so much about those kinds of things, and so it's so good to have some positive takeaways. What I saw was, and if anybody is interested in knowing a little bit more about how Utah politics work and how the legislative makeup has come about or anything like that, you're very welcome to get in touch with me outside of this meeting. But there have been some things that have happened that have meant that the legislative makeup of senators and representatives is different this year than it has ever been before. And that, plus what apparently were some maneuverings prior to the session beginning, meant that things happened right out of the gate with, as Hayley mentioned, some immediate effects in some cases. So some planning had been done, to say the least. So big thanks to Janet for pointing out that advocacy can work, and also to point out that families need to be at the heart of this. It's their story and it's their experience that can help make it real to the legislators. Unfortunately, even when it is super real, sometimes they have the ability to, thank you, Janet, to ignore what's right in front of them. And one thing that we know is that some of the stuff that's been happening in Utah, including the anti-transgender types of bills, are happening throughout the US. And my guess is that you've heard about this. So we are not a one-off. And this population is getting more and more marginalized. So I had
a psychiatrist call me yesterday from Montana. I don't know this person, but he called concerned that their Senate Bill 99 in their anti-trans bill actually includes all surgical procedures for medical specialties for Medicaid patients outside of, like, so if a person needs to see like a nephrologist and get some sort of, or like medical procedure in a specialty, in pediatrics outside of Montana and they have Montana Medicaid, then it limits all sorts of surgical procedures, even outside of transgender stuff. And he said that that language is included in that bill. And I haven't had a chance to go through it. He said, I think it's like on page 4 or halfway down the bill or something. But that would affect patients coming here because they don't have, he was concerned because they don't even have very many specialists in Montana, and that lots of their patients come here. So, so I don't know if anybody has that on their radar, but it looks like their session ends in April. And I don't know if that's worth checking out or if it applies to anybody here, but I think that what I'm hearing is that lots of stuff is just being snuck into these trends, like like a lot of the stuff in this bill literally went in the day before it was signed. So it was like the criminalization of this or the recourse of the withdrawal of consent went in the day before the governor signed the bill. So
Oh my goodness. Oh my
that's
goodness.
happening everywhere where it's like getting snuck in, little things are getting snuck in. And I think that because they don't even have, like in Montana, there isn't even like a medical professional in the legislature. Maybe there's a physician assistant, I think. But so if those things are going in there and people aren't paying attention, then it's not like anybody voting on this is even going to see that this has these other unintended consequences maybe that happen. So
Oh my goodness. That was terrifying.
unintended consequences are pretty disgusting. Yeah. So
Tina has her hand up.
Yeah, so Hayley, I'm so sorry. This is disappointing. I did want to mention, because when you started talking about the fact that, this diagnosis could, and all the laws they've made now could affect surgeries that don't have anything to do with transgender, it takes me back to a scary time when autism wasn't covered. And, I would take my son in to the doctor for, something completely unrelated to autism, but they would code it as autism because maybe behavior related to whatever he was doing. And so we would get the bill in the mail, even though we had full coverage. And so that's a scary, it's a scary situation. It puts our transgender families, in that position. So if we could put out a warning to everyone to say, this has, tell that provider, please do not code this as transgender. Please do not, if it has nothing to do with that, it should not be coded in that way. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I'm just giving you a fair warning.
I don't know either. I think that what's happening, what I see is that even like in the last week, then PEHP seems to have changed all of their stuff. So people who had prior authorizations done and who were able to get their puberty blockers covered or even surgery when they're 18 are getting denial letters now that they're not going to be covered any longer. Even though they qualify under the new law, then the insurance companies are sort of changing their requirements or their policies flat out to not cover gender dysphoria as a diagnosis code for their services, which is we're just kind of, things are just sort of coming out in the wash right now. So that's what I'm doing next, is calling PHP again. So
yeah, and you could have a family that goes in with concerns that the kid has anxiety, right? You can have anxiety, and any one of us can have anxiety, but just to tell families and everyone to be careful that they don't take that anxiety and say, well, it's directly related to the gender dysphoria, so we can't cover it. I've seen it happen. It is so ridiculous. And then
simultaneously, we also need to make sure that providers, I think that what I'm nervous about really is that we're having all of these patients that have been waiting. Like we have patients, all of our patients that are scheduled in May have been waiting since last July and last August to see us. So they've just watched this happen and people are freaking out, right? And what we're asking them to do is ask their primary care providers or their dentist or anybody that they've seen to document that they have gender dysphoria. And those providers are nervous now in the wake of this legislation about documenting that or saying that, yes, we knew this because they say, well, we're not qualified to have been treating it. And I think that really, I can't emphasize enough that really just documenting it just basically says, we knew that this was happening. They meet the criteria for this because they said that they were uncomfortable in their body and their gender identity is incongruent with their, body. And we just need to document it and have it documented by somebody in order to treat them, because we won't have been able to do that prior. And so hopefully the word spreads that it's really no big deal to put that documentation down as a provider and just say, I was aware of this. It's just like a one-liner, that we just need that to treat. That's all. So, yeah.
I have one more thing, Mindy.
Okay.
So I wanted to just let everybody know and make them really aware of the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities. You might have heard of them, but they are the people to go to. They know how to help families or anybody that's advocating for our kiddos to navigate the systems there. And I'll give you a wonderful example, but I'm right in the middle of some pretty big education and advocacy leading up to asking for some laws to be changed. And I came in just one night up to the Capitol this year because I knew that the Legislative Coalition, what's it called, Janet, the big event,
The reception.
The reception was the place for me to go and find people to talk to and create awareness and educate them on my issue. And here I am bobbling around, and Gina and Janet are there kind of guiding people on what to do and who to talk to. And I'm trying to figure out who do I talk to? I got to go read their name tags. Wait, let me get out my bifocals. And so at one point, Gina had been pointing me around to people and got me to all the important people that would want to listen to this. And then at one point, I felt these two little angel hands on my shoulders. And somebody whispered in my ear with this accent and said, go talk to that guy. He's with the governor. And so she kind of pushed me in that direction. And I'll be darned if that little angel didn't, and this was Janet Wade, by the way, she kind of just pushed me towards this person and said, go talk to him. That created a ripple. Her hands on my shoulders, I want to cry right now. It literally created a ripple effect that was a direct line to the governor, and the governor in turn, within a few days, contacted the Department of Health and Human Services and asked them to start having meetings with me and my tribe of people who have the same interest. And we are currently, we're in our third work group meeting now this week to change the law for people that we are trying to advocate for. So it really does matter who you know, because they know a lot and they can teach you a lot. So anybody that's looking to advocate, go to them. They're also looking for members, I think, too. And so they are my angels, honestly. This is something that I've been working on since 2020. And we've gained the ground we need this year to have our voices be heard. So thank you to the Legislative Coalition.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. That is so great. Okay. And we've got Janet's email in the chat. We'll make sure that goes out in the notes if you want to be added just to the mailing list so you can stay abreast on what's going on. Eric, go ahead.
It was really interesting yesterday. I was listening to NPR and the Just Start KUER affiliate, and they had a couple of freshman legislators talking. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat, and it was really interesting to listen to the gender discussion that they had, because they talk about how the legislative process works and how they would vote for something they didn't really like, but it was better than the alternative. And I never got the impression that either one of them really liked what finally came out on anything that that was addressing, gender, any of our trans community. It was just really interesting. It kind of gave me some perspective, but by the same token, there were also someone who is generating this language as well to put it in there in the first place. So it led me to realize that there are some cooler heads that are floating into the legislature, that everyone isn't quite as conservative as you might think. We still have that majority, but I'm hopeful that with time, maybe some of these things will shake out. I'm hoping this is I'm hoping that with time, this will cooler heads will rule.
Time and people voting.
Yeah.
Time and people
that's where we
advocating.
are.
Time and people understanding the gerrymandering that's occurred and the super majority. It's not just time, guys. If you want to see changes, action has to be taken. Yeah. This is the state we live in. Janet, did you want to say something?
Yeah, you have to show up. And that's what we're looking for in the coalition. There's only a few of us in leadership, and we were so fortunate to have Annalie and Lisa, and they're going to go into leadership. But we need more people so that we can focus on more bills. I mean, we really only have the capacity to focus on those 3 or 4 bills because it took so much effort and energy to do that. And also, it's building up that respect with the legislators and that kind of friendship, if you will. I had Representative Walk calling me in Saturday morning. I mean, it's just, and we have to have more people so that they can focus on something, because I had Representative Birkeland, and she talked to every person on business and labor in support of caregiver compensation. So it would have been hard for me then to have provided public comment against the transgender bills. You see what I'm getting? It is a game. I mean, it's a game of chess, and you really have to focus on the main issues. But if we had more people in leadership, we could have more issues, and legislators know they can come to us to find the information they need on services for people with disabilities. So I think that's just show up and join in. It's kind of fun.
If you have a Xanax before you go.
And a cocktail after, or a 5. Yeah.
Lots of
And you
cocktails
meditate.
after.
There's a lot of this that needs to be happening. So. Eric, I heard that piece as well. I think I'll try and find that clip and pop it in the Facebook group so people can hear it. It was really interesting, and yeah, I mean, let's hope that there are. We certainly shouldn't be looking at our legislators by the letter that's next to their name. We should get to know them and understand what their story is. We need to do that. We need to do that with everyone, no matter what, right? However, that being said, we live in a democratic society, or kind of, we sort of do. We need to make our voice heard through our vote to have the kinds of people we want to represent us on the Hill. So there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that needs to be done. And this was really eye-opening. And I am guessing that many of you see these bills, these laws directly affect the families that you work with, positively or negatively. And of course, there's a lot more that goes on at the legislative session as well than the bills that we've heard about today. And they have far-reaching effects. They will affect us in one way or another, even if it doesn't seem like it on the surface. So I encourage everybody to get involved. And again, without taking this too far, if you have questions on how to get involved, I would be delighted to talk with you about it outside of UCCCN as an individual. Okay. Very, very, very good. And thank you, Hayley, for putting that information in about an injunction.
Yeah, they're kind of just trying to get enough people to, that's the problem nationwide, is that it's so hard already for these families. And then to get somebody who's 10 or 11 or 15 or 17 to be able to withstand that litigation process is difficult, to say the least. So
Yeah.
if you happen to come across people that say, well, what can we do? We've been denied care, then you can always suggest that to people as a recourse.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Does anybody want to say anything else before we wrap it up about any topic?
Can Dora come to my house and help me try to figure out a car seat? Because you have to have a master's degree to put those car seats. Yeah.
I actually, as an instructor, so I can.
Oh, Dora, I didn't quite catch that. If you want to type it in the chat, maybe that would be better.
I had a roommate.
Audio.
I was in her car a couple of days ago, and no, my sister put it in. I'm like, well, oh, can you hear me?
Better. Keep going.
Oh, anyway, I'm like, oh, well, it's just looking at it. There's a couple of things that are incorrect. She's like, well, I don't care. It's my sister did it. I'm like, yeah, but it's your niece. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, we'll
actually,
have to.
I can stop by wherever you want, or if you want to meet at the health department, I can do it there.
Actually,
oh my
I was
gosh.
joking that I might be following up with you.
Yeah, of course. I would be happy to. That's why they trained us.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you guys, I just love this group so much. These third Wednesdays are the highlight of my month. So it's great to see you all, hear from you all. And just remember that you can always get in touch with this group through our listserv in between meetings if you'd like to. And then we've got our Facebook group as well. You can search for it on Facebook with UCCCN and ask to join, and we'll have you join in. And then we'll look forward to seeing everybody on the 19th. And we're going to look at those survey results and see what they tell us. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.